I wasn't supposed to hear it. I had just stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around my hair, when I passed the office door, just slightly ajar. Harold was on the phone, leaning back in my father's old leather chair. He was chuckling, that low, smug kind of laugh I hadn't heard since our wedding toast 2 decades ago. Yeah, she's just old now, he said. Doesn't even know what accounts we have, let alone how much is in M. Hell, I could move it all and she'd still be knitting scarves and baking pies. There was silence, then another laugh. Exactly. She won't ask. She never asks. I didn't move. My hand gripped the hallway wall like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I've been called a lot of things in my life, kind, graceful, quiet. But old had never sounded like this. It wasn't just about age. It was dismissal. It was erasure. And it came from the mouth of the man who once held my face like it was the only thing that mattered in the world. I didn't cry. I backed away, slow and steady, like I was leaving a crime scene. Maybe I was. Maybe something inside me had just died. At dinner, I said nothing. I served Harold his favorite, meatloaf with extra gravy, just the way his mother used to make it. He sat across from me, scrolling through his phone between bites. He didn't look up, didn't notice the slight tremble in my fingers, didn't ask why I wasn't eating. That's the thing about men like Harold. They don't notice you go quiet until the silence becomes permanent. Did you send the utility check this month? He asked. No, I said softly. You seem to have everything handled. He didn't catch the edge in my voice. After dinner, he fell asleep in the recliner with the television still blaring. Some old western. Gunsmoke, I think. I turned it off, pulled the blanket over him like I always did, and stood in the dark for a long time. Then I walked to the closet. At the very back, under an old box of ornaments and some faded quilts, I found it, my father's ledger. Black leather cover, gold trim, still smelled like pipe tobacco. Inside was the only money Harold didn't know about. $600,000. My inheritance. The one thing I never merged with him. I traced my fingers over the numbers. He thinks I don't know what accounts we have. He has no idea what I'm capable of. That night, I didn't cry. I opened my father's old ledger instead. If you've ever been underestimated just because you aged, share your story. Like, comment and subscribe because my revenge was just beginning. The next morning, I woke before Harold. The sky was still bruised with dawn, and the house hummed with that quiet you only get before coffee and regret settle in. I sat at the kitchen table with the ledger and a calculator, just like Daddy used to. 600,000. Every penny untouched. My name on every document. My father had made sure of that before he passed. You don't ever need to ask permission to live, he once told me. I never fully understood what he meant until now. I flipped through the pages, each one cataloging decades of wisdom and caution. Property bonds, municipal accounts, 2 insurance policies with only my name on the beneficiary line. Harold never cared to ask about it. He assumed everything I owned was his, and I'd let him. I let him speak for both of us at banks, answer questions at the doctor's office, order for me at restaurants. I thought it was love. I thought it was care. Now I know it was convenience. And I was done being convenient. By noon, I was at Angela's office downtown. She looked up from her desk, surprised. Aunt Ellie? Everything okay? I need to move money, I said. Angela blinked. All right. Slowly or suddenly? Quietly, I said. And absolutely. We sat down and I showed her the ledger. Her eyes widened. Did Uncle Harold know about this? He does now, I said calmly. Not with words, but he will. Angela nodded. She didn't ask questions. That's what I loved about her. She understood that not all betrayals come with bruises or slamming doors. Some betrayals whisper. We opened a new trust. My name only. Angela's firm as the trustee. We drafted paperwork to reroute all statements to a P.O. box I'd just opened that morning. Want to make it airtight? Angela asked. Yes. Then we file for financial separation. You don't need a divorce, just division of personal assets. It's legal, discreet, and binding. I nodded. She handed me the pen. I signed with a hand that no longer trembled. As I stood to leave, Angela touched my arm. You don't have to do this alone. I gave her a soft smile. I've been doing it alone for years. I just didn't know it. I made his eggs just the way he liked them. 2 over medium, 3 strips of bacon, 1 buttered toast, and a splash of orange juice, not too sweet, not too sour. I laid the plate down like always, folded his napkin, even gave him the little smile I used to mean. Smells good, Harold mumbled as he sat down, rubbing his eyes. It's Tuesday, I said. You always say I make better breakfasts on Tuesdays. He nodded absently, then reached for the salt. He didn't notice I was still standing. He didn't notice my ring was gone. I had taken it off the night before and placed it inside a small velvet box, the same one it came in 22 years ago when he proposed with trembling hands and too much hope. He didn't notice because he wasn't looking, and I no longer felt the need to explain myself. I sat down with my own plate, barely touched it. I just watched him eat, watched his hands move, watched the mouth that once kissed my fingertips now chew like I was the maid. Thanks, hon, he said between bites. You're good at the small things. Small things. I sipped my tea slowly. The smile didn't leave my face, because today I was going to do something big. Lena called around noon. You want to tell me why you're suddenly requesting old tax records and pulling papers from your safety deposit box? She asked, voice sharp but laced with worry. I told her everything. Well, not everything, but enough. Enough for her to stop talking. Enough for her to let out a low whistle through her teeth. That man has no idea what kind of woman he married, she finally said. No, I whispered. I think that's the problem. Neither did I. We met for coffee that afternoon. Just us, just like old times. I told her about the ledger, about the account, about Angela, about Harold's phone call. I didn't cry once. She leaned in, eyes narrowed like a hawk. What's your next move? I don't know yet, I said. I just know I won't ask for permission. Lena grinned. Now that's the Eleanor I remember. I knew she was still in there. She paused, then added, Do you want me to look into anything? Background checks, property records, offshore accounts? I know a guy. I smiled into my coffee. Maybe. For now, just stay close. I walked home under the late afternoon sun, feeling something I hadn't in years. Not anger, not sadness, power. It wasn't loud or flashy. It was steady, quiet, like a fuse before the fire. He left his banking email open one evening. Careless, really. Or maybe just cocky. He'd gone out to take a walk, said he needed air. I said I'd stay in and do the dishes. But instead, I sat at his desk and read line after line. One email thread with the subject, Account Transition, Marcus Maddox. My stomach twisted. Marcus, his son, that smug boy who called me Miss Ellie, like I was the help. The emails outlined everything, transferring our joint savings into a new investment account under Marcus's name. For estate purposes, Harold had typed, to avoid probate complications later. Lies. It was theft wrapped in formality. I scrolled further and found one more message. To his lawyer. Begin the paperwork to remove Eleanor's name. Quietly, I stared at those words, so long they burned into me. When Harold came back, I was already in the kitchen, wiping the counter with slow, deliberate strokes. You okay? He asked, hanging up his coat. I'm just tidying, I said with a smile. He kissed my cheek and moved on. And I stood there, letting his betrayal drip down into my bones, solidifying into resolve. He was building a future without me. Fine. I'd take the foundation right out from under him. The next morning, I wore my pearls. Not for him. For me. At the bank, Caleb greeted me by name. He'd been managing my late father's trust account for years. Mrs. Maddox, he said, standing. It's been a while. I'm transferring everything, I said, handing him the notarized documents Angela had helped me prepare. He looked surprised, but not skeptical. To your new trust? Yes. Full liquidation and reconsolidation. No joint access. Private trust. Solo beneficiary. And close the old statements while you're at it. He nodded, clicking away on his keyboard. Do you want him notified? No, I said calmly. Let him find out when it's too late. Caleb gave me a look. Not judgment, just understanding. When it was done, he handed me a small envelope, confirmation papers, new routing info, keys to freedom. As I stepped out into the morning light, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. Harold thought I was a background character in his story, a footnote in his final chapter. But he forgot who funded the first act. He forgot who came with land, inheritance, and grace. He forgot that I listened more than I spoke. And now, I had something he couldn't steal. Control. I got into my car, turned the key, and whispered, "Let's see how loud silence can be." The notary's office smelled like lavender and old paper. Susan had soft eyes and even softer hands, but the way she handled documents, firm, precise, told me she'd seen women like me before. Women who came in quiet and left a little taller. She flipped through the folder Angela helped me prepare. Revoked power of attorney. New will. Exclusive trust access. Updated health directives. Removal of Harold from every legal tie I once shared. "You sure you want all of this process today?" Susan asked gently. "Yes," I said. She nodded, pressed the stamp, slid the papers forward. My hand didn't shake. With every signature, I felt lighter, like I was cutting off a weight one line at a time. Click. Stamp. Sign. Click. Stamp. Sign. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even sad. It was surgical. By the time we reached the last document, Susan smiled. "You're not the first." I raised an eyebrow. "You're just the first one I've seen smile while doing it." I tucked the papers into my bag. "That's because I'm not leaving out of fear. I'm staying with power." She walked me out and patted my shoulder. "Then welcome back, Eleanor. Welcome back." I didn't know I had been gone. When I got home, the mailbox was already stuffed. A letter from the HOA, a coupon for dry cleaning, and an envelope with Harold's name scrawled across it, in handwriting I hadn't seen in decades. I opened it without hesitation. The first line read, "I saw him again." Janice, Harold's ex-wife, the woman he swore was crazy and dramatic, the one he claimed drained his soul and his wallet. The letter went on, apologizing for the intrusion, saying she didn't know who else to warn, said Harold had recently reached out to her, said they'd had dinner, that he was talking legacy and untangling old mistakes. I folded the letter slowly, not in rage, just in recognition. Janice wasn't warning me about an affair. She was reminding me of a pattern. Harold liked women who built something, then tried to erase them when he thought they were too old to matter. He wasn't just greedy. He was repeating himself. And this time, I would not be the exit he left behind. I placed the letter in the fire pit out back and struck a match. The paper curled. The ink faded. The past turned to ash. I stood there until the last corner turned black and floated away. Inside the house, Harold laughed at something on TV. I listened to that laugh like it was a ticking clock. Soon he'd run out of time. It happened on a Saturday morning. I was pruning my rose bush out back when I heard the drawer slam. Then the second one. Then the third. I walked in, wiping my gloves on a towel. Harold was standing in the study, holding an empty file folder in one hand, his face redder than the tomato vines we never planted. "Where's the paperwork?" he barked. I tilted my head. "What paperwork?" "The account folder. The inheritance. Your father's ledger. It's gone." I looked at him the way you look at a child who broke something important and is now blaming gravity. "I did some spring cleaning," I said calmly. He stepped closer. "Don't play with me, Ellie. Where is it?" "You told me I was old," I said softly. "You said I didn't know anything, that I wouldn't notice. So I stopped pretending to be dumb." He froze. I walked past him, gently pulled the folder from his hand, and dropped it into the trash bin beside the desk. "You emptied it," he said, quieter now. "You really did it." I turned to face him, and for once, I saw fear in his eyes. Not because I yelled, not because I threatened, but because I had stopped explaining. He opened his mouth again, and I raised a hand. "I don't owe you answers," I said. "Just consequences." He didn't speak to me for 2 days. Not a word. He moved around the house like a ghost stomping on floorboards, hoping I'd crack under the silence. But I didn't. I read my books, took long baths, played the piano again for the first time in years. Lena even dropped off a peach cobbler, and we ate it on the porch while the sun dipped behind the fence. When I came back inside, Harold was standing in the hallway. He stared at me like I was a stranger, not the wife he used to kiss. not the woman who rubbed his back when the arthritis flared. What are you trying to prove? He asked. That I don't need to ask, I replied. Not for money, not for love, not for space. He scoffed. You're not as clever as you think. I smiled. You're not as invisible as you hoped. He opened his mouth again, but this time I walked away. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, sat in my chair by the window, let the steam rise toward the ceiling like a prayer. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need revenge that screamed. I just needed silence loud enough to remind him. He had underestimated me. And now he had to live in the house I built, with the echo of the woman who no longer belonged to him. I was trimming dead leaves off the porch fern when I saw his car roll up. Marcus, in that sleek black sedan he always bragged about. He stepped out like he owned the ground under his feet, all pressed slacks and fake cologne. Miss Ellie, he said with a tight smile, we need to talk. I didn't invite him in, just pointed to the bench by the rose bush. He sat, legs wide, like he was preparing for a power play. I heard you've been changing things, he started. Dad's confused, upset, says you're being irrational. Did he also mention siphoning money into your name? I asked. He blinked. Once. Twice. I'm just helping him think long term, he said. No, you were helping yourselves to my future. He leaned forward. Look, this doesn't have to be messy. If you transfer half, just half, back into the joint account, we can put this behind us. I pulled a manila envelope from beside me and handed it over. What's this? Legal revocation. Notarized. Every joint tie between me and your father undone. He scanned it, jaw twitching. You can't just walk away like this. Watch me. He stood up fast. You're making a mistake. No, I said, standing too. I made that mistake 22 years ago when I married a man who thought love was ownership. Marcus stared at me, and for a second I saw it. Fear. The kind that comes when you realize the game is over, and you were never in control. That night, Harold didn't speak a word. He sat in the living room recliner, remote in hand, flicking through channels he wasn't even watching. His eyes were distant, sunken into whatever version of the world he still thought he could manage. I passed behind him with a folded basket of laundry. He didn't look up. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even disappointed. I was simply done. There's a kind of silence that doesn't ache. It settles. He finally broke it. I never thought you'd actually do it. I never thought you'd ever make me want to. He leaned forward, rubbed his face. Marcus was just trying to help. No, I said firmly. Marcus was trying to inherit me while I was still breathing. He turned his head slightly, like he was seeing me for the first time in years. What now? He asked. You keep the house, I said. I've made other arrangements. He blinked. Where will you go? I smiled softly. Somewhere where I'm not just an old woman waiting to be erased. He wanted to ask more. I could feel the questions pressing against his lips. But for once, he stayed quiet. And in that quiet, I knew. I had taken back everything he tried to take from me. Not just the money. My name. My peace. My story. Angela met me at the Garden Cafe downtown. She wore that tailored navy blazer she always wore when something serious was about to happen. I didn't bring much, just a pen and the folder. Are you sure? She asked. Yes, I said. I'm not leaving in rage. I'm leaving in truth. She laid the paperwork on the table between our teacups. Divorce by financial separation. House retained by Harold. Liquid assets restructured under my name. Medical proxies reassigned. Will rewritten. I read each line twice. Not because I doubted, but because I wanted to feel the full weight of it. Then I signed. Each signature felt like a breath I hadn't taken in years. Angela gathered the documents, slid them into her briefcase, and gave me that look again. The one that said she saw me not as someone broken, but someone restored. You know, she said, most people your age are settling into quiet routines. I sipped my tea. Then maybe I'm just late to living. We laughed gently. There was no grief in this parting. No rage. No final scene. Just closure earned the hard way. When we stood to leave, Angela hugged me tight, firm, the way my mother used to. And I realized something. The world hadn't gotten smaller with age. I had just let the wrong person take up all the space. The house felt different that night. Not quieter. Not colder, just honest. Harold sat at the kitchen table with a glass of scotch and nothing to say. I walked in, placed a single envelope in front of him, and turned to leave. "What's this?" he asked. "Final notices. Transfer confirmations. My forwarding address." He didn't reach for the envelope. "I never meant to hurt you, Ellie." "I know," I said. "That's what makes it worse." He looked older than I'd ever seen him, like the truth aged him overnight. I paused at the door. "You called me old," I said. Like that was the worst thing a woman could be. He looked down, ashamed. "But you forgot what comes with age, Harold. Wisdom, patience, and the strength to leave without needing applause." I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't cry. I just stepped into the night air, suitcase in hand, with my head high and my name intact. As I drove away, I passed the bank, the cafe, the notary's office, each one a checkpoint in the quiet war I fought and won. And in that moment, I realized I didn't steal the money. I reclaimed my voice. I wasn't just old. I was finally free.